to where. Ready? I love this song.
I don't want to stop. It's Friday.
Of a broken heart and a love.
I could just listen to that whole song. I love it.
I love Glass Tiger. So
I don't know what it is. I love it.
Me too. I love them. Can we have them on our show?
Oh, maybe.
Maybe
Well,
we
he's
could
on
ask him.
Instagram.
He's on Instagram. He does a 4:00 live.
Well, can he sing?
I think he can. Much better than me.
I disagree. Well, he had a really big band and you didn't, but
That's true.
okay.
If I had the right back.
So I'm fascinated by, and I know you guys didn't see us an hour ago, but I set all this up an hour ago and it was light out and now it's dark.
Yeah. See, there's the reflection of our light.
She's not allowed to move.
So I'm supposed to stay here. So I'm not really. I can't adjust. Okay.
So how was your week?
Hi. It was good. It's Friday. We're back at the cottage because it's just about having fun.
And Friday. So one thing that was big for me this week, maybe we should just start.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I hit the wrong button. Makes me irritated. We'll talk. Color relates.
Yeah.
But one of the things that was really big for me this week is I'm working with this particular program, and there was one thing that was driving me. There's a few, but most of them I could do a workaround. And there was one piece that I couldn't do a workaround because it was the internal programming. So what I did is I reached out. Say anything? Is it just me? But I always go with it's not me, it's them.
Yeah, it's never.
It's never.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
It's not me, it's always them. But what I did, which was amazing, and literally overnight, I woke up this morning and they literally sent me an email saying we fixed it.
It's like Christmas. I love when people do.
So literally, text me immediately, blah, blah, blah. They fixed it. I can do it. And I'm all excited. So
see, that's what happens. Ask us a question. Mm-hmm. We will answer your question and we will fix it.
And I asked them. So I took my own advice and I asked them a question. And
you guys got to ask the questions because I know, listen, there's always questions you have in business and you're not sure. And even if it's like, do I use this picture, this program or not? Like, how do I ask us the questions? Because the truth is, we don't know how long we'll be doing these lives, right? We're not sure. Things change. And so you need to take advantage. Ask us whatever you want. We're serious about it. And for those of you who have followed along and people have posted things and asked questions that would help them, she's playing with lights now. Launch something differently because they asked the question. So, I mean, if we can give you one piece of advice and we will answer it.
But it makes a big difference because when you can get to the people who created it, like this particular platform that I'm using, and they can make it. Now, anybody else who's going to come in to this particular platform is going to have the benefit of my question.
So, we were debating between two companies that were trying to do these platforms for us, and problem, and they'll implement and put it, and they fixed it and they worked on it because they knew it was good for everybody. Every time we ask the other people, it'll cost, and I would say, but aren't you going to roll that out to everyone? And they're like, yes, when it's done. And I'm like, well, why am I we did not go with them was for that reason in particular, because like, why would you do that? Like what I tried to explain to them is we're giving you really great things that when like saying this is thank you for the free strategy lesson, they were like, oh, but you have to pay for it. Like, I don't like to work with pictures. So
these guys did. They the people that you worked with, and these guys they understand it. They know it's going to be further. And made the switch.
And we're so excited. We can't wait to show you what we've done, but that's a couple more weeks away.
Exactly. Hopefully not.
No.
Hopefully soon. So all this week, we've been focused on podcasting, which is, I could talk forever on that. Found a really cool one that I posted today about, I think it was like 3 out of 4 people listen to podcasts. Not surprising. We like to learn things, but how you consume content since COVID, that more people are listening at home.
Right.
Because before a lot more people were listening at work and in their car.
Right.
We're not traveling as far now. At home, but it also gives you a bigger opportunity to reach a broader audience and think about how you can they're going to learn from you, or they're going to learn from somebody else who's putting out information, and that doesn't make the person who put it out smarter.
Right. And that's it's all the difference, right? Everyone sits there and goes, oh, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. Yeah, you could, but you don't. Will benefit and build a business out of things that you said I could do that.
So frustrating.
I hate that.
Week in regards to podcasting, and
you guys should learn to ask them out live. You don't have to be hiding behind the come on.
If you have a question, I'm happy to bring you on screen, bring you into the green room. Come on and you can ask your question live and we'll answer it. But we were talking about the sarcastic way we can answer questions.
Yeah, so today is sarcastic day. So we might not be
and real.
But with value.
Always. But sometimes, remember, and we've said this a long time ago, sometimes
go ahead.
So one of the first questions was about being a guest. So you hear that a lot. And the question is, they say that it's good to be a guest on. How do you get yourself invited to be on other people's podcasts? Because that's a really good way to start. So.
Okay. Be interesting. Have people want you on their show.
Exactly. They're very bright and fuzzy. So it was kind of interesting.
You know what? Didn't like that sarcastic answer.
It just wanted to fade you out.
No, but interesting, because if people go and check you on others, because if you say you really want to get on a podcast and this one specific one, then they're probably not going to give you an offer. However, there are ways to get on, and Stacy knows them better than I.
So obviously be interesting. But number 2, what you're going to do is you're going to pitch them.
Right.
So you're going to send someone, and one of the best platforms that I found in order to be a guest is called, believe it or not, it's called Matchmaker, which sounds really. Search on something like LinkedIn and look for podcast host.
You know, just thought of. You know, Plenty of Fish, which is a dating site. Should we call?
You've guessed exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
She digresses.
Bad.
So if you go on LinkedIn and you look at podcast hosts, and this has happened to me a lot as a podcast host, oh, I see that you're a podcast host. I would like to be I think I would be a good guest, or I know someone who would be a good guest. So that's a really great way to pitch yourself. So as a host, what I do is I immediately go to their profile, or if I'm pitched through another social media is a pitch fest. And we'll talk about that in a second, because I also got a question about that. But if you're, and it doesn't look like you're giving value, or you're not teaching anything through your social media posts, then I'm to back that up a little bit. So if you're offering value through your social media and we can see that your profile is full of information that you'd be, I find it really interesting that, you know, they'll go podcast host. Great. There's lots of podcast hosts out there.
Yeah.
And they're like, my client is a personal trainer. And so then I write them back and go, did you look at the topic?
Yeah.
Because I don't talk to personal trainers, because I'm not a health and fitness podcast. So also make sure that you're pitching. Look back and they go, yeah, it would be a really good fit. So do your research and do your due diligence, but it's not about being invited. It's about pitching yourself.
Right.
But of that pitch to say yes.
Exactly.
So that's my biggest piece of advice.
When you're going to pitch, say something interesting.
Be interesting.
Right? I mean, give, you know, it's copywriting. You want to say something that's intriguing or interesting, or, you know, somebody can say, oh, in their brain, they can go, oh, my audience would love to hear about that.
Yeah.
Right.
You can look at the articles they've written. You can go on their website, and you know the difference between people who are putting information out on. If they're sell on social media, that's exactly what they're going to do on your podcast, which leads me. If your guest hijacks your podcast and goes into a pitch fest to sell themselves. Because it's Friday and it's fun.
Well, it's sarcastic and it's real.
It's a little bit of both. See, I'm convinced that the camera goes.
So that's when you immediately lead into, thanks again. It's time to wrap up the show. Have editing or recording issues and cut that piece out before you air it. Oops, sorry, I don't know how that happened.
It's the weirdest thing.
Viewer or a skilled host, you can number one, ensure that, you know, you can tell people a million times there's no pitching, but they'll still do it.
Yeah.
And so when they start, you need to be skilled enough to get them to stop. You don't want that. And if they don't and continue, then the truth is,
oops, did it not record? Tech stuff, but I don't know what happened with this. And we're at it as well. Like, what happens if your guest is really boring?
Yeah.
With today's world, is done and you've got your thing and you go, oh my goodness, that really, and that did happen to me, in all seriousness. It actually did happen to me. I interviewed somebody and it was just, they didn't talk about anything. They didn't give any value. It didn't relate to my show.
Is that why I didn't make it on your show?
Because she's interesting. So I literally, and if this person,
It was boring.
It didn't record.
Yeah.
So in all seriousness, that's what I said. I've never been able to reschedule. It's the weirdest thing.
Out of curiosity, did you invite them or did they pitch you? That's the problem, right? Because normally when people pitch you, you assume they're decent because they're pitching you.
Well, I mean, they wanted, so they said, this is you.
Yeah.
This is why I want to be on your show. This is what I'm going to talk about. And I'm like, great. It seemed like a really good work what they wanted to talk about into the theme of my show, which I thought was fantastic.
What you guys need to understand, you have a responsibility as a guest, right? And you might say, well, that person. The truth is, it doesn't matter, because if you're good, you will be able to continue and make it interesting. And you know right away if you know what you're talking about, change the vibe. So I have been on podcasts and summits that the interviewer was really bad. Not pitching. I didn't pitch, but I hijacked it and started bringing the energy up and talking about what I wanted to make it more. Blame the host, because when somebody listens to it, they don't know. They just know it's boring.
Right. But and the host does have an obligation. In that particular case, I did not overshadow. I didn't go down the road of kind of changing the vibe. I just didn't air. And that would be doing them a disservice.
Right. But if you're a guest that understands their subject and has taken speaking, I can't say this and it on podcast, and you're going to do videos and you're going to be on stage, and you might think you know how to speak, but the truth is, unless you know the strategies behind it, it's hard for you to think on your feet to change that. And then you'll be able to go, okay, this isn't going very well. Let me flip the switch and get it a little more exciting. So, don't think that it's up to the host.
Part is they think, okay, I'm a podcast guest.
Yeah.
The podcast host is going to ask me questions, yeah. And I'm going to answer them.
Yeah.
That's what, maybe a social media quick video or something like that is. But on a podcast, you need to do your own research as a guest on the show and be able to use the terminology, the vibe, the theme, maybe even the title and all of that. So the difference is that, so it's all obviously talking about linking people to different things. She used that verbiage. She used that terminology in her interview.
Right.
She's the only one that different conversation. So I had to kind of maneuver it back so that my listeners could have that continuity. And why was she on there? And she was able to bring that to the audience as well, which was kind of cool.
Yeah. Whenever I'm a guest on a podcast or a summit, which is kind of the same kind of thing. Same question. What is it that you want from me? Like, what is it that you want me to tell your guests? Because if I have a sense of where you want to go, I can change my conversation to get to that. Stacey, what is it that you want your guests to walk away with when I leave? And that's where I'll go, right? What is it? So if you tell me that, then I can go there. Again, be able to flip like that. If you're walking on there with a canned present, it's not going to work. So you have to be a little more fluid with what you can do.
Which is why we talked about speaking a couple of weeks. I don't know what time, but it fits into everything that you do, specifically around speaking to somebody.
Yeah.
When you're in an interview.
Yeah.
So the other question in regards to guest is about interview before you say, yes, you can be on my show, to get a feel for them, or maybe sure about that.
So you're the host. So I think you would have your, like, as a host,
Right. So I wouldn't. Like I said, the one case where I was pitched, I looked at their stuff, the way that they answered the question. If you have, say, for example, a landing page where I could go and say, apply to be on my show,
Yeah.
your application process is a list of questions. You need to know from them to be able to make that decision. They answer the questions really well, and they position it well for your show. Because I think the problem, and I know I've heard this from a couple of other people as well, when you end up with a pre-interview, it's like, oh, I wish we were recording this.
Right.
Oh, that's really with somebody.
Yeah.
That's what people want to hear. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I was really excited to learn that you did this. You can't duplicate that.
Yeah.
So I think, which is part of the podcast, which means the pre-interview kind of takes away from that.
Yeah. And as a guest, because that's most of the
I get to sing. Otherwise, she'd have to have guests to sing, and maybe they don't want to sing.
So, as a guest, I would never do a pre-interview. I'm not interested in doing that. Interviews, bad guests do, because they are worried about what you're going to say. Good guests don't worry about that, so they don't need it. So, I was listening today as I was XM. I listen to XM Stars on Sirius all the time. I'm going to give a plug. Michelle Collins. I like her talk show. It's like listening to a podcast, but for those of you who've seen Emily in Paris, she was interviewing Gabrielle, the guy, the French. Because she was interviewing him, had never talked. She was very excited because she loves the show. Has never talked to him, and you could hear the sincerity of the newness of like she was like, oh my God, I would have never. You guys have noticed on talk shows, sometimes the guest will say, oh, I talked to your producer about that before I got on the show. And it totally feels rehearsed, right?
Yeah.
So there's a very different...
Or they'll say, like we were talking backstage before we did this or whatever.
Yeah, people don't want that. They want to know that this is your stuff. I mean, we don't get together and rehearse what we're going to say to you guys on Fridays or on Mondays. We just go. She doesn't know how I'm going to answer. I don't know. Get that true realistic feed.
Otherwise, then it's okay. So why don't you just write out your question, read the questions, and they'll read their answers, and you won't have a conversation, and then you won't have a success.
Well, because it's true. I hate when people say, well, do you have questions? They're like, no, we don't have questions. We don't have any questions. Right?
Have a conversation. That's what a podcast is a conversation.
It's a conversation.
You do need to tell people about it. So I do get a lot of questions. I actually remember, this was really funny. I don't think I've ever told you a story. Like, okay, great. I'm in. Like, I want to learn about this so I can help my clients more. I thought I kind of knew the basics, but I wanted to make sure properly. This is what we do. I'm all about learning, and I'm never thinking that I know absolutely everything. So I went to this workshop.
What happened?
I learned less.
You knew more than the instructor.
What is that?
It's they don't like us being sarcastic.
I don't think they like the straightforwardness.
No.
I don't know what's going on. It's never happened.
No, I agree. Like that's the truth.
So unfortunately, I didn't learn more. I mean, obviously there's very specific strategies around lunch, which I don't want to get into too far, but basically,
what's the biggest one?
Tell it podcast audience, Tell people. Don't be
I-
like, shh, don't tell them. I have a podcast.
Yeah, I'm too. I tell everybody how great mine is.
You tell people. Post
I'm
on
like,
social
listen.
media.
I'm like, yeah. Like I just listen to it, right? But the truth is, you're right. Tell people and be interesting.
And that's also the answer to the question of how frequently should I launch an episode? I've been really busy, so I haven't launched my season 3, which I'm about to do. But I also want to bring a different in tune with what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I'm just doing a podcast for the sake of doing a podcast. And what's the point of that?
That's right.
Which is good. So, and then we created a show where you get to sing.
Get to sing. That's it. Everything I do,
Yeah.
it's about singing. Daughter,
Your daughter can teach you.
She is like phenomenal.
She really is. Actually,
I don't know where she got. Be like, you're beyond hope. Just keep singing your little songs.
Your little thing. It's okay. Seriousness, like you do need to spread the word and use your network to spread the word. Yeah. And if you don't have that, that's okay. Because if they're searching for it, because people are literally just searching topics and stuff like that, and you will start to grow an audience.
That I really highly recommend is, again, listen to other people that you enjoy, podcasts or radio, because there are talk radio shows, and that's why you can learn a lot from, right? They have to hold that. There's no ads on there, so you have to understand how people can hold conversations and keep it interesting enough for you to keep listening, to learn from other podcasts, from other podcast guests, so that you can be interesting.
Linda's So I think what we're going to do is we're going to mix it up. So next Friday, the questions that we got, what we're going to do is we're going to answer sarcastically first, and then
switch.
And Linda's just pointing out that you like singing and fishing.
I like fishing, yes.
No, you don't. You like talking, using fishing as an example.
I've been using fishing for like years now. I'm a vegetarian. I don't fish. I don't eat fish.
Because it's an easy example.
People understand fishing.
They do. Yeah. I think I used quilting one day in an
not
example.
As sexy.
Well, let me tell you how I know nothing about sewing. I know less about quilting. And I don't know how the example popped in my head, but I was using it one day. And I think it was just the fact that people is that literally anything you can think of, there's probably a podcast for it. And I think I used quilting and fishing.
Well, the thing about fishing is you will might have never fished and never even been close to anywhere that you.
How?
Why is that? When we talk about it, you get it, right? You know, that whole teach a man to fish.
Put on a boat and you stick a stick in a string and they fish, they bite it, and you get, it's not hard.
No, I guess
it's patience.
It's patience.
Go to a store and buy it.
Yeah, or I just don't do that.
Well, I'm from the East Coast, so I would literally go where like
boat, and we can watch the tide.
A really big tide. Right? I don't want to go to a store and buy lobster. I'm going to go buy it from the boat.
Now I've got.
That would be good.
We go do Bay of Fundy.
Stay with my parents.
Yeah, and watch the tide. We'll take a video. It's really exciting.
Oh, it would be a long video. It's a long tide. Anyway, Linda's saying.
I wouldn't know.
I have no idea.
It doesn't look hard.
It's pretty.
Is it like what?
3D images and stuff. So with like your bed, it looks like there's like building blocks.
Is that like the Flintstones when they would say like knit 1, purl 2, or is it?
Not quilting? Two different things.
Anyway, no, sorry.
So we're not going to use that as an example. We're going to stick with the fishing. Okay, we are calling it a night because our camera's going in and out, and we're not sure why. That's just interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or maybe it's our sarcasm.
No, that's knitting. Linda's confirming. All right. So what's going on? Sort of talking about some general stuff. We talked about speaking, podcasting. Guess what? We're going to take our
jazz hands.
See, and it, like I'm convinced the camera doesn't like us. It goes fuzzy when we do jazz hands. So, see? So video next week. So obviously take and bringing your face into it. So you do need to be seen. People want to get to know your face. They want to get to know you. Monday at noon, how to be seen, and lighting might be part of it. Be camera ready. Be camera ready. Have a good weekend, guys.